And Boeing today announcing a temporary shutdown of its assembly lines. Washington State in
Boeing plans to lay off about 17,000 workers.
Boeing didn't just close a factory. It pulled the plug on an entire era of American dominance. In a stunning announcement, Boeing declared it would shut down all of its U.S. manufacturing plants, abandoning the very soil where its empire was built. Thousands of workers left jobless. Decades of trust shattered. But here's the real twist: this wasn't a business failure. This was a reaction. A devastating counterstrike sparked by Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. What was meant to bring jobs back may have just pushed one of America's last industrial giants over the edge. And what happens next? That's where it gets even darker. Because Boeing's exit isn't just about layoffs, it's about the collapse of U.S. industrial credibility, military security, and global influence. If Boeing walks away, who's next? Let's unravel the full story, because the consequences are bigger, deeper, and far more dangerous than you think. Part 1. Boeing leaves America. A financial earthquake hits 4 states. The shock wasn't limited to headlines. It tore through neighborhoods, towns, and entire state economies. Boeing's decision to shutter its U.S. factories hit 4 major production hubs like a sledgehammer: Washington, South Carolina, Missouri, and California, states where Boeing wasn't just a company, it was the lifeblood. In Everett, Washington, once home to the largest building by volume on Earth, silence replaced the sound of jet engines. Housing prices collapsed overnight as workers scrambled to sell. In North Charleston, South Carolina, small businesses that had relied on Boeing employees, cafes, repair shops, even daycare centers, faced immediate ruin. And it wasn't just about jobs. It was about entire local economies unraveling. Tax revenue disappeared. Schools faced budget cuts. Emergency services lost funding. The collapse of Boeing's industrial footprint triggered a domino effect of secondary layoffs from suppliers, contractors, and support industries that had built their survival around the aerospace giant. Worse, no contingency plans existed. City officials in St. Louis scrambled to fill the void, but aerospace jobs don't just grow back. They vanish and take the next generation's hopes with them. Boeing had been more than a company. It was a promise. A symbol that hard work in manufacturing could deliver a middle-class life. Now that promise is gone, and in its place, despair, debt, and a growing sense that no company is too American to walk away. But the economic quake was just the beginning. What followed struck even deeper into the heart of U.S. national security. Part 2. National security on the line. Boeing's exit triggers military alarm. Boeing wasn't just building commercial planes, it was one of the backbones of America's military machine. Fighter jets, surveillance drones, missile systems, space vehicles, many of them bore Boeing's name. For decades, the Pentagon had relied on Boeing's tightly controlled, domestically anchored supply chain to ensure the highest standards of security, precision, and secrecy. That trust just shattered. With production moving overseas, questions exploded. How can the U.S. protect classified technology if it's being built in foreign facilities, subject to foreign laws, vulnerable to espionage or sabotage? Boeing insists safeguards will be in place. But the reality is chilling. Outsourcing defense manufacturing introduces cracks in national defense that no cybersecurity patch can fix. Think about this: if a stealth fighter component is now produced in a country with shifting alliances or weak enforcement, what stops that data from leaking or being sold? Defense experts are already warning of a supply chain crisis, with risks of infiltration, counterfeit parts, and loss of technological edge. And the U.S. military is caught in a bind. Boeing was a trusted pillar, replacing it won't be easy. Smaller domestic firms lack Boeing's capacity. Foreign alternatives? Politically and strategically dangerous. This isn't just about planes. It's about control, sovereignty, and survival. When your military hardware depends on another nation's factories, you've lost more than a contract, you've lost leverage. And while the Pentagon scrambles to respond, something even more fragile is breaking: the American dream itself. Part 3. The death of the American dream, a generation left behind. For millions of Americans, working at Boeing wasn't just a job, it was the dream. Decent pay. Good benefits. A sense of pride in building something that touched the sky. Generations of families built their lives around Boeing's factories, believing that if you worked hard and stayed loyal, the company would take care of you. That illusion is now in pieces. When Boeing packed up and left, it didn't just take jobs, it erased futures. Technical schools, apprenticeships, and engineering programs that had long been pipelines into the aerospace industry were left adrift. Students who had once dreamed of building planes are now questioning if there's any future in manufacturing at all. The collapse triggered a cultural shift. STEM programs lost funding, universities saw aerospace enrollment plunge, and schools that once boasted job placements at Boeing suddenly had nothing to offer. Even worse, entire regions lost purpose. Towns built around Boeing's presence now face identity crises. What happens when your local pride, your economic engine, and your children's futures all vanish in a single press release? The ripple effect is bigger than economics, it's psychological. Young Americans, already skeptical of stable careers, watched a national symbol turn its back on them. Many won't pursue industrial work again. And with that, the U.S. risks losing more than talent, it loses belief. Belief in industry. In upward mobility. In the idea that America builds things. And while the public mourns what's lost, global rivals are seizing the moment and racing ahead. Part 4. Global rivals pounce, America loses ground as Airbus and China advance. While the U.S. reeled from Boeing's exit, its competitors wasted no time moving in. Airbus, Boeing's fiercest European rival, immediately stepped into the vacuum. Governments and airlines once loyal to American aerospace began shifting contracts to Airbus, drawn by its stability, European support, and now, clear competitive advantage. Meanwhile, China smelled blood in the water. With state-backed funding, companies like Comac accelerated production of their C919 jet, a direct challenge to Boeing's dominance. And with Boeing out of the picture in many global deals, Beijing found eager customers. But this isn't just about commercial aviation. International governments began rethinking military procurement too. Could they really count on a company that had abandoned its home country's workforce overnight? That question opened doors for alternative suppliers and strategic realignments the U.S. could neither predict nor control. Even more alarming, countries scrambled to attract Boeing's relocated operations, offering massive tax breaks, cheap labor, and relaxed regulations. In doing so, they didn't just win contracts, they poached high-tech jobs, engineering talent, and a century's worth of industrial expertise from American soil. What had taken decades to build in the U.S. was now being auctioned off to the highest bidder overseas. America's industrial lead? Slipping. Its innovation ecosystem? Fragmenting. Its geopolitical edge? Fading fast. And at the center of this global unraveling stood one man, Donald Trump, the architect of the very policy that triggered it all. Part 5. Trump under fire, the tariff that backfired spectacularly. Donald Trump promised to bring jobs back. Instead, he may have just driven one of America's most iconic employers out the door. The 145% tariff on Chinese goods, intended to punish foreign competitors and protect American manufacturers, became the spark that lit Boeing's fuse. With raw material costs soaring and international partners retreating, Boeing made a ruthless decision: survival over symbolism. And now, Trump is caught in the crossfire. Critics across the political spectrum are pouncing. Progressives call it corporate betrayal enabled by flawed policy. Conservatives accuse the administration of overreach that crushed competitiveness. Workers, once Trump's base, are furious. They lost jobs, pensions, and futures. And the man who promised to defend them is now seen as the reason their factories went dark. Protests have erupted outside shuttered Boeing plants. Former employees are marching with signs that read, "You promised us protection. You gave us pink slips." Meanwhile, the White House is scrambling to spin the narrative. Some allies insist this is temporary, short-term pain for long-term gain. But there's no sign of recovery. No plan. Just rage and confusion. And the symbolism is impossible to ignore. Trump, the self-proclaimed champion of American manufacturing, is now the face of its most dramatic collapse in modern history. The political fallout could be massive. But this isn't just about a presidency. It's about trust, the trust that government and business once had with the American people. And now that trust is broken, we're left with a far more dangerous question. If Boeing can walk away from America, what industry is next? Boeing's departure isn't just a corporate move, it's a warning siren for an entire nation. What began as a trade war ended in an economic implosion, a military vulnerability, and a cultural unraveling. A symbol of American strength is now a case study in collapse. And behind it all? A brutal reminder that policy without foresight can burn down the very house it claims to protect. Thousands are jobless. Entire towns face extinction. Rivals are rising. And the U.S., once the unquestioned leader of aerospace, is now fighting to stay in the race. The question is no longer why did Boeing leave? It's what if this is only the beginning? If the most patriotic companies no longer see America as home, then how much of the American dream is truly left standing? Because once giants fall, it shakes the ground for everyone.